All right, welcome back to the New York Real Estate Investing Show. And we have a different show today. We're going to break this up into two parts. Part one today and then part two on another episode. We've been talking a lot about, how to, strategies and tactics, and we're going to talk a lot about marketing. We're going to bring guests on, but I feel like a lot of the stuff that we talk about, we want to use stories as much as we can just to demonstrate that this business, number one, is crazy. And number two, it can be very lucrative and you can get into some bad deals. So we're going to cover all that. Crazy Stories Part 1 is just going to be kind of Michael and I just speaking to each other about some crazy stuff that we have done in the business. And I'm going to try to keep all the stories New York related. And we'll have some fun on this episode. So I'm going to go first. We'll kind of go back and forth on some stories on some deals. And, we'll make this very entertaining and educational. So the first story I can think of just off the top of my head that was crazy was, this is a strategy that I still do to this day, and it's very profitable. It doesn't get me a lot of deals, but it gets me big ones. And I remember there was a vacant house that I found in Highland Falls, which is near West Point, not too far from, the heart of the Hudson Valley. And I remember cold calling the seller when I was in San Diego. This is a long time ago. And I remember she was like, hey, that was my dad's house. And I thought that it was gonzo. I thought the bank took it. And I remember saying, like, anytime you hear that, they're either going to say, don't call me again, it's not mine, or they're going to be like, the best deal you'll ever do, because their perception is basically zero. So anything over zero is good for them. So long story short, she was very skeptical about everything. And I got her to agree that, listen, if for some reason this has equity, and I didn't know if there was equity or not, if there's equity, would you sell to me? And she said, yeah, I don't really care. And I never met this lady, and this is all over the phone. And I ended up going on it wasn't the county clerk. It was, it was the county clerk. I went on the county clerk's website, and the property was listed on the market like 5 years prior. And I think there was a mortgage on it, but somehow, some way, the mortgage, I went on the county clerk's record, and the mortgage got discharged, and it never got paid off or anything. It's just, they took the lien off the property.
Happens once in a while. It just happens, deals. Very rare, but it's
very rare. So this property, I remember I saw this and I told her, I said, listen, there's no more mortgage on this property. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, this is free. There's a lot of taxes and stuff owed on it. There's county liens and city liens, but this thing's got some equity. She's like, all right. So I said, listen, what number would you want to put in your pocket? Like, if I just basically wrote you a check? And she's like, I don't know, 15 grand. And I'm like, would you do 5? And she's like, no. So we settled on 10 grand. So I bought the property. The sales price at the end of the day was like $10,000. Like, it was really more because there was taxes and stuff. It ended up being like probably 40 or 50 grand. And this property was a mess. I remember there was, we closed on it with cash. We didn't wholesale it. And what ended up happening was we had a big spread. We ended up making like 50 or 60 grand on it. I partnered up with a guy at the time because I didn't want to just shell out cash at that point in my career. And I remember that we had this buyer who was just a real jerk. Like, he was very, very, very hard to work with. And at the end of the day, I remember the neighbor got all up in our business, and we had this humongous dispute over property. Have you ever had an encroachment, Michael, where there's an encroachment? Yeah.
When they do a survey reading and they find that the fence is either on too far into your property or too far into the neighbor's property.
Yeah. So we had an encroachment issue, and we started going to battle with the neighbor, and the buyer started freaking out. And this house was basically falling over. It was built in 1880. And I remember we got to the finish line here, and we ended up making a lot of money on it. But I just remember it was a crazy deal because I thought the seller had no idea she even owned the property, and there was a mortgage that got discharged. And it was just wild, and really opened my eyes up to if I could do 4 of those a year, right? Like these weird properties, I mean, I can make an extra 100, 200 grand net to me. So that was a very interesting story. And I guess the lesson I would say for the listeners is that a lot of new investors, if they have no money whatsoever, they probably have time on their hands, because usually it's either or. So you made a video this morning. I was watching it when I was making breakfast, and you said that Deal Machine said if the values are worth over 500,000 in your area, you need to get 1,250 to get a deal.
It made me so happy about it because I did 600 when I didn't
Yeah,
get
you didn't hit your number. Yeah, you got to double
because
that.
Deal Machine advertises that the average in this country is 300 per deal, and I got like 600, and not one of them was even close to a deal because I had done the research on it. So when they told me 1,200, I'm like, okay, maybe I stopped too soon.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So the point there is like, this could be a really good niche if you're getting started. If you can identify vacant home, like real vacant homes, whether you drive, I don't really like to go to properties, but you could have someone go or go yourself. But if you can get real vacant homes when the owner is still on title, if it's like a Deutsche Bank trust owned property, don't even waste your time. You're gonna just work for free. But you can pull out, I mean, especially in like Long Island and in the Hudson Valley, you can make 70, 80,000. You know, I know there's a friend of ours made like 180 grand on a vacant house one time.
I tell people all the time, driving for dollars is a lot of work for limited payout, but you can hit a home run 6-figure deal.
Home run.
If you find somebody that's deceased and the heirs don't think that they own it, and they really do, and it's a lot of work, but it could be a 6-figure deal.
It absolutely can. And the funny thing is, like, I've noticed that like a lot of the vacant properties that I end up buying, they weren't vacant on any lists. They just happened to be vacant, like just, you know, by the nature of it. So some of the vacant data that you pull, I've noticed like now, like with the market being way more competitive, I've found that 35% of those vacant houses are actually vacant. And then the balance of them are like the mail's just not going there for some reason. There's tenants usually, or they're living there. So
most of the broad lists are not, they're not 100% accurate, but they're good. They're still good to use.
yeah.
Um,
So that was one. That was an interesting story. What about you, Michael? I mean, Long Island, you got 3 million nut jobs living in one
What
body.
comes to mind with me, it's not such a crazy seller story, but it's a crazy story on my end. This was the most roller coaster up and down deal I ever went through in my life. So I found an old guy. I mean, he was really old. He was like in the 90s, and he called back from a mailer, and he says, "I want to sell 7. I own 7 houses. I want to sell them all."
Where was this, by the way? What town?
5 were in Hempstead and 2 were in Levittown. He lived in
Okay.
one of them. He lived in a house in Levittown. He was really old, and like he didn't write down anything. He didn't have a computer, so like I would ask him who the tenant is, and he would think, and he would tell me a number, and then go, "Wait, I missed the digit." So he was losing cognitive ability, as most of us do when we were in our late 90s.
Yeah.
He couldn't run these properties, and we went back and forth. I met with him in his kitchen a bunch of times, and then his daughter got involved, and she's like, "I really want to sell this. These properties are killing him." And 3 of them were contiguous on a commercial street on Front Avenue in Hempstead. So I said, you know, maybe there's some commercial use here, right? And we were negotiating on a price, and I think he wanted like 1.5 million for all of them, and we were down to like 1.1 million. I forgot what the exact numbers were. I was really just throwing numbers out, trying to figure out what they're worth. But with these 3 contiguous properties, and a 4th one was like almost touching it. I said, maybe there's something I can do. So I found this realty company that only specializes in commercial, like QSRs, quick service restaurants. And I'm like, what's the story with this property? And I got like a survey for them, and they're like, you're telling me, I think you got a good shot here at a quick service restaurant. And if it works, based on triple net lease and 5 cap, it's a $2 million property. You can sell it in 5 minutes. So he goes, it's just one thing I have to check. So I'm already thinking, this is it. I'm going to make $1 million wholesaling this. I'm already preparing for my interviews with Steve Trang and with all the people all over the place. And I've already got everything ready. This is $1 million deal. This is great.
Money's already in the bank. It just hasn't happened.
Already spent it. I was already spent it. I'm looking at Lamborghinis and Ferraris. And he goes, just one thing I have to check. He calls me back 2 weeks later, and he goes, yeah, it's not going to work. He goes, it's too small. They need it bigger. It's a little too short. That the property that touches it, I can't get a car through in the area that touches where we were going to use that as a parking lot. So I'm like, well, there goes all the money. It's gone, because I can't pay what this guy wants. He's asking me for, you know, close to retail on it. It's not going to work. And then an epiphany hit me like a lightning bolt, and it said, wait a second. If I can give him close to his number, but just allocate the amount for each property, I can take all the Hempstead properties at a pretty low rate. I can probably wholesale them, and then I can deal with the other Levittown properties later. And even if I have to like break even, I'll make a big chunk of cash on that. So I said to her, you know what, we figured our price. And I go, okay, but this is how I need it allocated. And I had to give 7 different deposits for all these 7 properties.
Okay.
But the Levittown properties were like, I was paying pretty much retail, and the other property I was paying really low. That's just how it worked out. And he said, okay. Then I went out to the market, and I for the 5 Hempstead properties, I got a price of $750,000, and I found the buyer for $975,000 for those properties. So it's a $225,000 deal. So amazing deal. We close it. And then I'm thinking, what the hell am I gonna do with these Levittown properties, right? Because if I buy them,
the property, you wholesale the properties, right?
I wholesale. We closed. I had to wholesale that, and I said, we'll deal with Levittown later. And I'm like, these Levittown properties, I'm gonna break even. I might even lose money on it, but I still made so much money on it. And out of nowhere, the daughter calls me and says, "Is it okay if we don't sell you the Levittown properties? We're gonna deal with them ourselves." I said, "Yeah, no problem." And that was it. They sold them themselves. So I made $225,000 on the Hempstead properties.
Did you double close or assign it?
I had to double close. I lost a little money on the because I didn't want them to know that I was wholesaling. Because I didn't want them. You know what? I should have just assigned it. But in the end, I made like 200 grand. So I went from, this is the greatest wholesale deal ever in the history. I'm going to make $1 million on it, to this deal is in the toilet, to this deal I'm going to make $200,000 on, to I may have to lose 50 grand on the other 2 deals. Oh, by the way, not only do I not have to lose money on the 2 Levittown deals, but they sent me back my deposit. So I made even more money.
You got more money. Yeah. Wow. How did you find those deals? That's crazy.
It was a postcard. It was a postcard.
Yo, that's crazy. That is crazy.
I was so up and down. Like I remember like an emotional roller coaster, from this is amazing to, oh shit, this is a waste of my time, to wow, this is great, but I don't know how it's going to be, to this is even better than I thought.
Wow. That's unbelievable. That's the power of doing deals in an expensive market. People always complain it's hard to find deals, but yeah, when you get a deal, you're making, our average wholesale fees are like 30 grand. If you count California, it's probably like 35, 40 for me. So it's just like, I don't care that it's hard to get deals, because when I get a deal, I'm not making 10 grand. I mean, listen, if I have to make 10 grand, I'll make 10 grand over zero. But in our areas like California, New York, you don't got to really worry about that, because there's just so much meat on the bone. Wow. That's awesome. So here's my story. We're just going to go back and forth for a little bit here.
Fine.
So, and disclaimer, this is not a one-up scenario. We're just kind of riffing off the cuff here.
No.
This is one of the 2 short sales I've ever done. I was an idiot too. If I knew what I was doing now, I would have made like 150,000 on the check. Anyway, so long story short, I was in college. I was literally in a college class. This is a long time ago. And, I got a lead, and the guy was like, "Hey, I live in Virginia. There's this property up in Sugarloaf, which is like Chester, Goshen area." And he's like, it's vacant. There's mold everywhere. And he's like, I thought it got foreclosed on, and I researched it, and it was on the tax delinquent list. So I'm like, dude, like, what do you owe on this thing? Like, you said you're in foreclosure. What do you owe on this property? And he's like, I owe like $450,000 or something crazy. And I'm like, dude, you have no equity. Like, you're gonna it's gonna get foreclosed. So I ended up doing some research. He's like, no, trust me, man. Like, I think this is a deal for you. And I'm like, I'm still pretty new at this point, and I've probably done like 10 deals at that, maybe even less. And he's like, I look it up, and there's really no foreclosure action filed on this guy. There's 0 list pendants, and he hasn't paid his loan. He filed bankruptcy. He totally like got out of the area. So I'm thinking like, maybe there's a deal to be made here. So I remember calling him back, and I said, hey, I need to offer your lender like basically nothing, and I don't know if they're going to take it. And he's like, trust me, make them an offer. I think they're going to take it. And I'm like, dude, you owe like 4 something. I'm going to give you 30,000. I'm going to offer them 30 grand. So they're basically going to forgive your loan. I mean, really, at the end of the day, they're going to forgive this guy's loan. And he filed bankruptcy, which I think was part of the reason why they didn't care, because he basically was a wash to them from like a creditor perspective. So I think that's how it worked. Anyway, I'm not an attorney, but so I remember I called, or I sent an email to the seller.
Who was the lender?
It was
Little bank.
I tried to go buy lists from them after. I forget what they were called. Something loan servicing, Select Portfolio Services, SPS.
It's a huge company.
Yeah, but they were servicing the loan. The lender was ultimately, it's almost like a property manager managing someone's properties.
Owned by a little bank, but they were servicing for them.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, like the note, I bet you they bought the pool of notes, and they knew that half of them were going to be a wash, and they're going to make money on the balance. So anyway, I made SPS an offer. He sent the email to them. They said they accept the offer. So now I'm like, oh my God, like this is insane.
Crazy.
I didn't even know this house was destroyed. Like this house was a total, like almost like a safety hazard with the black mold going on. So I ended up getting a buyer, and it was technically a short sale, but I still assigned a short sale legally, like it wasn't sketchy. I made like $30,000 on it. I wholesale it to Larry and Frank actually, and they were like, "This thing's a mess, but I'll take it." So I made like 30 grand on that. The seller ended up getting money somehow. He got a little bit of money from the attorney. It was this weird scenario. But looking back on that property, if I got that lead now, I literally could have probably wholesaled it for 100, or if I were to rehab it, I probably could have made 200 grand on this house. Like just because it was like where it was. And but it just, the point of that story was, it sometimes, when you get a lot of leads, you're like, oh, I don't want to work this. Oh, it's not worth my time. Oh. But if you just make an offer on every property, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I get properties sometimes where they're like, hey, is that offer still good? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Let me go back and look. So
I send something that looks like a contract sometimes, and
Yeah.
like sometimes 9 months later they'll send it back to you signed.
yeah.
Like, whoa, well, you need an attorney, but
Whoa.
I said
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Oh,
Yeah, you got to make
So-
offers on everything for sure.
Make offers. Yeah. I'm a big believer too. And like, a lot of people say in sales, like you shouldn't make an offer. Like I make an offer because like at the end of the day, the more offers you make, the more money you make.
By the way, I just came back from this Gary Harper, the Sharper thing, and he said that if you really want to drill down on a real estate investor's company, and almost all his clients are real estate investors, he calls you got to pick a brick. He goes, the brick is like the building block of your business. The one thing that determines really how the business does. He goes, the one thing that with real estate investors is offers made.
100% agree with you.
Not leads. It's not leads. It's not even deals. He goes, it's offers made. He goes, if you track your offers made, and now I have a board here where anytime I have to make an offer, it goes up there. I got to make an offer that day. He goes, that is it. He goes, obviously there are a lot of things that have to happen beforehand, and a lot of things that have to happen after. He goes, but the one break of real estate investors is offers made.
I 100% agree with that. I've been tracking my offers for years, and it has been a game changer for me financially because I know we made 20 offers this week, whatever the case, and like it's just the numbers game. At the end of the day, it is a
in New York, it take a long time, right? Those offers may not bear fruit for a long time, but you make those offers and they come back and turn into deals later.
I 100% agree. That is the vital KPI metric, right? And we can talk about KPIs for hours. We'll probably do other shows on that. But anyway, that was a wild story where I remember just like couldn't believe it worked.
When you throw out a crappy offer and somebody takes it, I mean, that's amazing. To a lender or to a seller, it's great.
Yeah. Anyway, so what do you got, Mike? I know you guys. Oh, what about that one where the wholesale? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I if you can't think of one, I know that one.
No, I got two more, but you tell me which one. Bring back
the one where the attorney said, well, no matter what, he's got to sell it to you.
So I was going to talk about that one. Okay, so let me do that one first. That was one of my first wholesale deals, right? So just from my experience, for the first 4 years I was in business, I was buying at live auctions, online auctions from REO agents. That means bank-owned properties, real estate owned as REO. And I had never gone direct to seller. Then I started going direct to seller about 5 years ago. And I got a guy in Great Neck. So for those that don't know New York, Great Neck is a pretty high-end area, right? A lot of $1 million, $2 million houses. But apparently there is one little stretch of Great Neck that is shitty. And this house was in the shitty part of Great Neck. And it was a legal two-family in Great Neck. And I was terrified. I was terrified about what it was worth. I didn't know what it was worth. I thought maybe Great Neck investors would not buy in this part of town.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. So there was a tenant upstairs who I never got to see that unit ever.
Oh,
and
no.
The guy didn't admit, but he lived in the base. He lived on the first floor. He wouldn't say he lived there because it was so horrific, gross. The bathroom didn't work. I don't know what he did. It was a big backyard. Maybe he used the backyard. The kitchen was disgusting. The guy was a hoarder. I mean, it was horrible. But it's a legal two-family in Great Neck, super high-end area. So I negotiated with the guy. I end up getting it around I think 500,000. That was his number. He wanted.
That's unbelievable. That's insanity.
He wanted to get out, and I said okay. And I was pissing in my pants, thinking I'm going to take a beating, right? Because I don't know, maybe this part of Great Neck it's only worth $400,000. I didn't know what to do. I arranged a showing, and remember I was selling it occupied. Second floor tenants coming with the property. All you can see is the first floor, and I had 60 people come and see it, and I ended up settling on a price of $620,000. It was a $120,000 wholesale deal. So that's so far so good. But I was terrified. The seller was a real angry guy. He was like pissed off at the world. Everybody, I would just listen to him telling he was a bank security guard. I think he used to fill up the ATMs, and he got robbed once, and he got attempted robbery a bunch of times. He had to shoot somebody. The whole thing, but how everybody screwed him over and nobody was good to him. And I'm like really having a heart attack here because I'm thinking at the closing, this guy's going to see I'm making 120 grand. So I go to my attorney. I go, maybe we should double close so he doesn't see it. I'm afraid he's going to walk away. So my attorney said beautiful words to me that I've said to you and to many times as I broadcast. He goes, he can be pissed off. He goes, but he's not selling it to anybody else. He's got to sell it to you. And that's another beauty of New York. This does not happen in most states, but in New York, if you're a buyer and you want to buy and you're in contract with a seller and that seller does not want to sell to you, you can put a list pendants on the property, which means just like you're foreclosing on him, he can never sell it to anybody else. And B, you can sue him for specific performance for the entire $500,000 purchase, whatever the purchase price is. So, and because almost 99.9% of the transactions in New York, the seller is represented by an attorney, he's going to ask his attorney, hey, I don't want to sell to this guy. And the attorney's going to tell him, you got no choice. So that's a beautiful thing about New York. Now, in other states, you do little things like record the contract, record an affidavit of contract, memorandum of contract. That doesn't really make sure you get the house. All it makes sure is it could screw up title a little if the guy wants to sell it to somebody else. But in New York, when you're in contract, it is as solid as can be. That seller is not going anywhere. And we closed and we made $120,000 on it. So that was a great deal. And it was a little crazy there for a little bit. He was a little, here's the craziest part of that deal. This is the craziest part. I forgot about the craziest part. We get to closing, right? And I have a buyer who's paying me $620 for the house. He's going to rehab the house. And I said, the second floor is coming occupied. He goes, yeah, but you told me the first floor is going to be vacant and cleaned.
Like broom cleaned.
I go into the house. The guy is there. And I go, what's going on? Are you moving out? And he goes, I'm going to move out in the next couple of days. So the buyer goes to me, I'm not closing until the place is broom clean. So I'm like, okay, what do you need done? He goes, well, you got to bring people in. He goes, we got to clean it out. He goes, it's probably gonna take us 3-4 days. I said, just stay here. I ran to Home Depot. I picked up 4 guys that were waiting outside for work, for Trabajo. And I rented a U-Haul truck, big ass truck, I don't know, 40 foot, 32 foot, I don't know. And I bring these guys here and I bought brooms and stuff. And I said, let's get everything out there. So I said, just clean it out. The guy goes, whoa, wait a second. Some of the stuff is garbage. Some of the stuff I'm taking with me in my car. And some of the stuff I want to put in a storage facility. I go, okay, let's just start separating. So we just start separating and I'm rolling up my sleeves and we're just making piles and piles of shit. It was pure shit. And we load up the truck for his storage facility. We drive to a storage facility. We empty it out. We then put all the stuff in his car. Then the rest of stuff we put in the garbage. I drive it to the dump, pay $1,200 in dump fees besides the other thing. But in the end, we got it broom clean by closing. But
whatever it takes. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. And especially those buyers. I've had that happen to me before. They yell at the end and you're like,
you once said this, like on some level, it's almost easier just taking a property down and buying it because it's just you and the seller. And
yeah,
you're not in the middle. On a wholesale, you're in the middle. So I had a buyer who was paying me 6 figures, but I was contractually obligated to provide a broom clean. The truth is, the seller was contractually obligated to provide it for me, but once I assigned the contract, then I'm responsible for.
You're out of control.
So it probably cost me a couple $1,000s and a lot of aggravation at the last minute, but we got it closed and it got done.
That's amazing, man. And that's the power of big deals. I mean, crap, you're in an expensive market. You're in New York or you're in Cali or wherever, like Miami, like this is normal. This is not abnormal. So we got time for a few more stories here. So we'll go back and forth a little bit longer. Time flies here. So I want to, Mike, what do you think is more relevant? I have a crazy, like logistical story, kind of like the one you just said. And I have a monster deal in Rockland County. What do you think the listeners would like better?
Well, let's do the crazy logistical one for now.
All right. So this was actually not that long ago. This was over Christmas time in 2020. I got a lead from, by the way, where'd you get that deal from? The Great Neck? Was it a mailer?
The PPC lead.
PPC. Look at that. PPC works too. Anyway, so this one I'm going to tell you about. It was a mailer and it was like a 12-month follow-up. Like I knew it was a deal. They inherited this condo. It was a total mess. This thing was just a total, filth pot, it was just filled with crap and there was just junk everywhere. And there was a bunch of obviously humans. There was animals in there too, but there was a bunch of people living in there. And the son inherited the property and he couldn't really handle himself. So the uncle was kind of like overseeing everything. Long story short, they had title issues on this thing. It was a mess, this property. And, I got it for like I think I got like a record price in this like, I'm surprised the HOA didn't shoot me down being like, dude, are you like the property robber or something? Like it was a real dump. Like I am totally okay with the offer I made because of the condition. And it was like a condo anyway, so it's not worth that much, 1-bed condo. Long story short, we're at the finish line. This is a wholesale deal. I think I had like a $25,000 spread or something like that. It was a pretty big deal, like for the value of that condo. Like normally condo assignment fees are small, 1-bed condo fees. So we're at the 11th hour. I'm in San Diego, and I really don't look at my phone in the morning, especially in California, because I like, it's 3 hours back. I don't really like to mess with it when I'm out there. And I come back to my phone at like, I don't know, it was like 10 o'clock California time, or no, it was like 8. No, it was 8 o'clock California time. So it was 11 o'clock on the East Coast.
22 missed calls.
Yeah, 22 missed calls. And I'm like pissed. I'm like, what? And it's all from the buyer and like all it. I get a call. Oh my God, there's pandemonium outside. There's the cops are here, and there's a lady in the hallway curled up in a ball with cats, and there's cat litter everywhere. And like the HOA, like everyone's like freaking out. The police are there. And I go, did someone get shot? Like, what's going on here? Like, what is going on? And they're like, apparently, so what happened was the buyer was doing their final walkthrough. This didn't have to be broom swept, but it had to be vacated. So no one could be in the property. And
they were still there.
Yeah. So the plan was the deceased seller's son was going to go into a hotel with his friends. And then there was another licensee at the property. She was living there for a while. No one was paying any bill, considering.
You should explain what a licensee is, because I didn't even know what that was till 6 months ago.
Yeah. A licensee is someone who basically has had the right to stay in a property, but they're not like a paying tenant, or they were like not
they
never.
They had the right to be there, but they don't have the rights anymore.
Yes, exactly. So they had the right to be there, and they had to leave. So what ended up happening was the licensee, the girl, was supposed to literally move next door, because this lady owned a bunch of units in there, and she like felt bad for her. Ironically, the girl's dad lived down the road from me in California, which is the ironic part of it, but that didn't really matter. So at the 11th hour, the owners, that lady's son, who was like gonna let the girl stay, was like, there's no way she's moving into this property. She's going to destroy it. It's going to be like the hills have eyes. And she's like, and so the lady had to tell her, she's like, hey, you can't move here. And she freaks out, goes pandemonium. The guy is going to get money for the property, the son. And he's like, get out of here. You got to leave. Literally throws all her shit out in the hallway. There's cat litter everywhere. There's a cat running around.
You're not allowed to do that, unfortunately. I really wish we could do that, but you can't.
Yeah. So the cops end up showing up, and I'm like pissed off. The seller was living in the property. The uncle was confused. The buyer was pissed. So I'm like, listen, guys, there's nothing we can do right now. I actually called
and you're in the middle of it. So it's another example of you being in the middle of the subject. Yeah. The buyer wants to know why you're not performing, and you're not performing.
Exactly.
The seller's not performing.
Yeah, and the attorneys got mad at me because I kind of like, well, it all happened and I was the buyer. And anyway, so I actually called the mental health department, and they like laughed at me. They were like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do? You straitjacket someone?" And they were like, basically, piss off, go fly a kite.
We'll get back to you. Don't hold your breath.
We'll get back to you when someone bites someone's head off. So I'm just sitting there. So I'm like, I was actually going back to New York for the holidays. So I'm like, listen, buyer, there's nothing we can do right now. I said, I'm going to be back in town in like 24 hours or 40. It was like on like a Thursday, and I was coming back on like a Saturday or something, or Friday night. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I said, I'm going to come back, and we're going to take care of this, and we're going to get this thing cleaned out. So I flew back, and this is like a Saturday. It's the middle of December. It's freezing out. And I take my dad with me, hanging out with my parents at their house. And I'm like, hey, Dad, you want to be entertained? You want to see something interesting? And he's like, he's an ex-cop, so he's seen some crazy shit. So he goes, he's like, yeah, sure. So we drive out to this property. I knock on the door. By the way, there's no lock on this door. You could just barge open whenever you want. The lady opens the door. There's a cat peeping through her legs. She's in a bathrobe. She's like, hello. And I'm like, hi, I'm Greg the buyer. And I heard there was some action going on here the other day. I want to try to solve your problem. So I'm in the middle of this lady's disgusting condo that she doesn't even own. My arms are crossed if you're watching the YouTube video. And I'm just looking around. I'm like, and there's like filth everywhere. It smells like shit, like literally feces. There's a hole in the floor. And I'm sitting there. My dad's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And I'm like, I look both ways, and I look at her, and I'm being serious. I go, I forget her name. I said, do you really want to be in this property? I sounded like an attorney almost. And she's like, no, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, obviously the biggest reason you can't, you have to stay is because you have nowhere to go, right? She's like, yes. I said, listen, if I can get all your crap out today, if I can take care of you and your cat, put you guys in a cash only with pets motel for 10 nights. Basically, I'm going to give you the money to stay there, but I'm not putting my name on the hotel bill. And I can move you out and put all your crap. Literally, this is shit. There's nothing valuable here except for some kitty litter in storage. Would you do this all today? Because I'm going to do this right now because I need to get this property. We need to buy this property. And she's like, yes. So literally, this is like
10 days. You gave her 10 days.
10 days in the hotel on the house for on May. So I literally gave her like $1,000 and gave her cash and said, here. So what ended up happening? It's like you're at an intersection, all the lights turn green, and normally that's not the case. I call a storage company, they literally down the road on the same street. They're like, yep, we got availability. I said, cool, book it. I call a moving company on Google. We'll do it. We'll do it. We got time later on. I said, okay. I call a motel. They say, yes, we can take pets. Yes, we take cash. I said, obviously, everyone there's a drug dealer. I'm kidding. Probably, they probably were drug. It was sketchy. It was in Newburgh. It was not a good area. No, it was in the town of Newburgh, but it was not too far from the city of Newburgh, which is scary. So in the matter of 4 hours, I dropped my dad back off. I say, hey, I got to take care of this crap. I take all this lady's shit. We compile it in the front of the unit. We take it over to storage. We load her storage unit up. The movers come. They move all her shit into storage. Once again, literally a bunch of shit. I end up walking out of this house. I have the cat in the bag, like the thing's like meowing in the bag, and I'm like nurturing the cat, making sure it's not gonna bite me. And I drop this lady off at this hotel. It's like it's probably like 7 o'clock at night right now. It's fucking freezing out. I'm used to the sunshine, living at the beach. And I drop off her cat. I put all of her shit in the hotel like area where she's gonna put it into her room. And I'm just like wiping my hands at the end of the day. And we end up doing the deal that following week. And I actually went to that closing and I was telling the buyers how much pandemonium I had to go through to get this done. But the lesson that I learned from that is that at the end of the day, no matter, I don't care if you're on your business, in your business, if you're levitating on your business, I see all this crap about automating stuff. If you're not a problem solver, okay, you're not going to make a lot of money. You're not going to be successful. Sometimes, I don't advise this every deal, and I don't even go to houses really at this point, but sometimes you got to roll your sleeves up and you got to get dirty. And I was so freaking pumped to do that. And I got more joy from moving this lady out and being a problem solver than the money I made on the deal. Right. So that was bananas. That was absolutely bananas. And it really just proved to me that at the end of the day, your ability to solve problems, your income is in direct proportion to your ability to solve problems.
How much do you think it cost you to deal with that crap that day?
It cost me like $1,500.
It's not bad.
No, not at all. So that was a wild story. So Michael, I know we got 5 more minutes left. I want to respect your time. I know you have one more story you wanted to share, and then we'll wrap up and maybe we'll do a part 2.
So I just got a quick one where it's just sort of crazy because of where wholesale numbers are today. So I had a property in Bethpage that was also had a licensee in it, right? A guy who was the boyfriend of the owner. Owner lived there. Owner is like in a mental facility now. And if she isn't, she should be, because she called me like 17,000 times when I told her ex-boyfriend that he had to leave. But her brother, it's in a trust because I don't think she's mentally competent. And her brother has been paying the expenses on this house while his sister's ex-boyfriend lives there. So he's like, I got to sell this house. So we come to an agreement on price. The way I looked at it, I thought at the time I would have to close on it, evict the guy, and then rehab it. And it was a small house, small 3-1 ranch. But it's an area where I knew there wasn't a lot of downside because the land value was pretty strong. And I knew that worst case, I could sell it for almost what I paid for it, just for land for a builder that was going to build it. And I figured I'd have to close on it. As a hunch, I just said, you know what, let me just try. And I thought I was going to make 40 grand on it if I had to close on it, rehab it, and sell it. That's what I thought. That was the number I thought. And I said it was worth it.
That's a deal. Yeah.
So just on a whim, I said, let me throw this out to my buyers list at a price where I can make money. I made like 50 grand.
What?
50 grand wholesaling. And I'm not sure what exactly went on here. And that's with a tenant. And I was straight up uncooperative tenant. House needs a lot of work. Like I was not holding back, pulling any punches. And I sold it to a builder who paid me what I thought was like $50,000 or $60,000 more than what builders were paying. And I think that guy is going to wait out the tenant, kick him out, and then build a big house on it. So like that was insane. I made more money wholesaling it than I thought I was going to make taking it down and rehabbing it.
That is, you know what? That's crazy. That just shows that you never know until you
never know. Can't hurt. Like I never thought I could wholesale. Until a year ago, I thought I could never wholesale a property that has a non-cooperative tenant in it. But you can. The price is right. You can.
if that you always say this in your videos, and I think it's real estate is always a function of price. And just because you might not think it's a good deal doesn't mean the guy on your list doesn't think he might think it's a great deal, right? And you could think it's a bad deal. And that's why, like you said, sometimes I'll wholesale a house and I'm like, I'm making 40 grand, and the guy like, whatever. Some people need to keep their crews busy. Some people are developers. Bethpage obviously is a really
I sold something recently with a $90,000 wholesale deal. The number I thought was insane, but it was a group of guys who bought it for student housing. It was near Hofstra. So for them, it had a lot of value. They were going to cut it up into like a 7-bedroom and sell and rent it to 7 students. And like the value to them was much more than I thought somebody would pay for it.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. And wow. Yeah. Is that right by the golf course over there? That property you had?
Not far. The Bethpage is a really, really good area. Bethpage and Plainview are really hot areas. I mean, there's a lot, every area is hot right now, but like Massapequa, Bethpage, Plainview, there's a bunch of areas there that are really doing well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I mean, this was a great podcast. I'm sure the listeners are like, and here's the big point that we wanted to make. We're not trying to flex here and like tell everyone how good we are at doing deals, because I'm sure we do a bunch of shitty deals too. This is not every day this happens. But if you're in the trenches and you're making offers and you're solving problems, you're going to make a lot of money, number one. And number two, you're going to have war stories that you can, exchange on a podcast, and you can talk about, and you can use the stories to make lessons, like, make offers, you might be able to sell it for more than you think. Don't, let your limiting beliefs or something.
Even if you think you have to close, if you have a buyer's list, try it, see if you can buy it on it. Sure, you got nothing to lose.
And I found that too, like when I'm trying to sell a deal and I know I'm closing either way, that's when I have a lot of leverage in that negotiation, because I'm like, dude, like if you don't want to sell, I'm buying it anyway. Like
I had people calling me saying, what's wrong with it, or giving me lowball offers. I'm like, listen, I was planning to close on it. I just want to see what I can get for it. That's the truth.
Totally. Well, awesome. Well, that was a great episode. I'm sure the listeners got value. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the show. And if you have listened before, or if you're listening for the first time, if you can share this episode with 10 people, copy and paste the link, send it out, put it on social media, and also leave a review or wherever you're listening to this. That's how the show grows. And until the next episode, I'm Greg Helbeck here with Mike Pinter, and we are signing out.
Bye-bye.